Okay, so this is an episode that I have been wanting to record for a while, and I really truly think that this is one of the most important episodes that I am recording. And this is something that might be, truthfully, a little bit controversial. It might make some of you feel really uncomfortable, but in my experience, what I'm going to talk to you about today is a critical component of starting and building a successful business and also of creating abundance and wealth in your life. And the truth is that most people who are unwilling to do this, most coaches who want to build and start a business, whether it's an online business or a brick and mortar business, most coaches are going to be unwilling to do this to get their business off the ground or really create anything with consistency and predictability because this is a scary thing. And the thing that I'm going to talk to you about today is against societal norms and what we are taught by financial experts. And I really, really want you to think deeply on this and hear me out, okay? Because the truth is that if you are either a startup business or you're struggling in your business or you don't have steady, predictable, consistent, sustainable growth in your business, it's pretty foolish to think that you can just figure out something that you've never done before without investing in learning a proven process from someone who's already done it. It's also foolish to think that you can create a business with zero startup costs. And really, I talk to so many coaches who tell me how badly they want to build their business, how much they want to make more money, how they want to get out of their 9 to 5, how they want to have the impact. But they follow up with thoughts like, I don't have the money. I'm going to save and then I can invest in my business. And they make fear based decisions around their business and around their money that ultimately affect the rest of their lives. No joke, the rest of their lives, because they are scared that it won't work. And guess what? It's true for pretty much everyone in the beginning that they don't have the money, right? And let me tell you just a little bit of background when it comes to how I built my brick and mortar gym. So I had at the time, a decent amount of personal credit. And I want to say about $10,000 in cash in my savings account. And my boot camp was a total of about $40,000 in startup. So there was about a maybe $6,000 build out. Their mirrors were like $5,000. I think I paid for those two things upfront in cash. So it was like roughly 10K for those things. And then everything else, the 50 kettlebells, the floors, like the desks, I mean, literally everything to furnish a 2,000 square foot studio had to go on credit cards. Okay. So, and the coaching program that I invested in order to help me start and build and grow my business, which was the number one reason that I was successful, also went on credit cards, right? So that was really uncomfortable. $40,000 as a teacher was a lot more than I made in my annual salary. And that was a lot of money for personal trainers as well, which is what I had been doing before. And so of course, the thoughts went through my head. How many years is it going to take me to pay off this debt if it doesn't work? That thought was absolutely in my mind. It was terrifying. And I actually remember the moment where I committed to this coaching program, which was about $5,000. And it was the last of the personal credit that I had. I was done. I was tapped. I had no more cash. I had no more credit. I did cry a little bit after that phone conversation. And it was the scariest thing ever. Let me just tell you, okay? So between paying for all of that stuff, and I actually ended up having some issues with the location, so I had to switch that last minute. So I spent about $40,000 before I ever saw a return. And there was actually a 6 month window where I made no money because we were going through the build out process and all of that stuff, okay? And you know what? I knew for a fact that I was taking all the right steps and I was doing the things I needed to do to be successful. And let me tell you, that coaching program, that was the scariest part because that was the part that I saw as like, well, maybe I don't need this, right? Maybe I should save this 5K for equipment or, whatever else I might need for my business. And let me tell you, that part of the investment, that was the scariest part. It was all terrifying, but that was the scariest part. And that decision is the reason my gym was successful. And it is literally the reason that I'm sitting here recording this podcast for you guys today. It is that powerful. Okay. So I'm talking about debt, you guys. Like, we are going to be sitting here talking about debt today. And with Authentic Conversion, I kind of went through the same process. I had hired a mindset coach, and that was, I can't remember if it was either $9,000 or $10,000 that I was working with this person for about 6 months. All of that went on credit cards. I did not have that cash. And I started to feel like I needed more help with strategy. Now, I didn't have my coaching offer. Authentic Conversion at that point was just a done for you content service at $47 a month. And yes, I had a decent number of subscribers, but I was only making a couple $1,000s a month. So I knew I wanted to launch a coaching program, but I had no proof of concept and I had no clarity even really about what I was creating. I didn't quote unquote have the money. Okay. And in fact, that was one of the scariest times in my life because I hadn't had any income in a couple of months previously. And then I was just making a couple $1,000s a month. But what I had was the belief in myself. And what I had was a really big vision. And so I had, again, all of this startup debt without any proof of concept. Oh, and I should say, I paid off all the gym debt before any interest ever came due on a credit card. $40,000 all within about a 21-month period. So I had like all these different no interest credit cards. And I decided that's exactly what I was going to do again when I started Authentic Conversion. So I didn't have the money. But what I knew when starting Authentic Conversion and needing to hire a coach for strategy after I just spent $9,000 or $10,000 on a mindset coach, what I knew about at that time from my experience was the power of leveraging short-term debt to build a business. It is one of, I think it's a controversial thing, and I think it is one of the most critical decisions that entrepreneurs have to make if they ever really want to go anywhere in their business. So I ended up finding this other coach, and she was more of a business strategist than the person that I was working with. And so we had a conversation, and I really liked her. And I remember thinking, before she gave me the pricing, I remember thinking to myself, okay, if this program is $5,000 or less, I will buy it. It was a 10-week program. And I remember thinking, okay, if it was $5,000 or less, I'm going to buy it. And then she hit me with a $7,000 price tag. And I remember thinking, well, I know I need this. I know that this is my next step. So I asked her if I could split it between 2 credit cards. And of course, she said yes. And what ended up happening with that $7,000 investment, which I made in May of that year, by the end of June, I had made $15,000 cash. So in 1 month, I doubled my investment. What if I had said, I don't have the money? What if I was scared to take on that short-term debt? What if I had convinced myself, no, you'll keep doing what you're doing and save up for the next 6 to 12 months and then you can go do it? And I actually did the math on this. Over the following 6 months, so June was the first month in 2018 that I launched my coaching program. And let's say I hadn't worked with this coach, hadn't spent that terrifying $7,000 on credit cards. It would have cost me over the next 6 months $177,000 if I'd been too scared or if I had been debt or risk averse to invest the $7,000 I didn't have. It would have cost me $177,000 just in the next 6 months, you guys. And I know for a fact, had I not made that investment, I would not have a multi-million-dollar business now. Was it terrifying? Yes, absolutely. Both of the times that I have gone into short-term debt to start businesses, it was terrifying. But both of those times, and especially the second time, which was even scarier, was it one of the best decisions I've ever made? Absolutely. I know a lot of you guys have listened to the episode I recorded with my client, Jenny Henderson, who basically went from making $3,000 a month to being on track for $400,000 this year. And when she signed up for my coaching program, which I gave her, a great payment plan and all of that, at the time, it was a huge stress for her. It was a huge stretch. And the program, that the cost at the time was, and she's Canadian as well, so the currency exchange Canada to US isn't great. But my program at the time was what she was making in about a month and a half of work. And it was very scary for her. But she didn't give in to fear. And the result of that was that she made over 6 figures for the first time in her entire life the last 6 months of 2020 alone. So she had been making $3,000 a month, like she shared in that episode, in June of 2020 when we started working together. And between June and the end of the year, she made $100,000, over $100,000. So she hit six figures in the last 6 months of the year. She went from $3,000 a month to $12,000 a month, 4x her income in the first 30 days. But she could have said the same things that I've heard so many times from coaches, not just coaches who, inquire with me, but just in general, when you're having mindset conversations with startup businesses. And I have these conversations all the time. Where would she be if she had given into that fear? Where would I be if I had given into that fear? But because she didn't give into that fear, she made over six figures in the last 6 months of a global pandemic year. And she's on target for $400,000 in billing this year. That's amazing. And what's so interesting to me, and these are just some of my thoughts around leveraging short-term debt, is that we take on long-term debt for things that we perceive as necessities, right? Like cars or houses and household items and college. And let me tell you guys, those are much bigger liabilities than investing in the growth of your business, right? How many people do you know, I'm raising my hand here, who have degrees from college that they don't use? I have a bachelor's and a master's degree that I don't use, right? Cars depreciate, household items, like we have these necessities, and it's okay to take on debt around those things, right? And truthfully, you should, because if you don't, you're never creating assets, right? You're never creating financial abundance long term for yourself when you own things, right? So that's a totally different conversation. But we have no issue taking on debt for certain things that we perceive as necessity. But the truth is, short-term business debt, if you're all in on your vision and you're completely willing to do the work, is the smartest decision you can make. It truly is. I have created a multi-million-dollar business and previously a multi-six-figure business with my gym because of the willingness to leverage short-term debt and not saying, oh, I'll save for it, not saying, oh, when I have the money, like none of those things, because that's not reality, right? And that's never going to get us anywhere. And I know so many people follow the never go into debt financial people, the Dave Ramseys of the world and that kind of stuff, which is fine. But in my opinion, that messaging is not intended for entrepreneurs. For employees who aren't dictating their income and who can't literally grow their income by 10 to 20x in a year, sure, fine. For employees, but not for entrepreneurs. Never for entrepreneurs. And if you have adopted that mindset, you will hold yourself back, because not leveraging short-term debt, I actually think, is the worst advice for entrepreneurs, because the fear of creating that leverage and results from short-term debt will keep you stuck. Anyone who says, oh, I'm going to save for your program, or anyone, right? And this conversation, by the way, isn't to convince anyone to do anything. It's just presenting a different option. It's presenting different thoughts about a very, very, very important topic. You are going to keep yourself very stuck, okay? And if you have that fear of creating leverage and results from short-term debt, you are not going to go anywhere. It is a disempowered view on both money and on your belief and your perception in yourself. I am so passionate about this because I know the positive effect that short-term debt has had on my life. And I have seen it with my clients so many times. And I used to go into the mode that probably many of you go into when you're thinking about your clients and them investing in you and what they have to do. And the conclusion that I've come to, because I used to have a lot of guilt and fear around that as well for other people, not for me. I'm like, yes, I will leverage short-term debt all day, but I would worry when it came to other people. And I would, feel guilty if someone had to do that to work with me. And I have coaches and colleagues who have said the same thing. But I've seen it so many times in my clients where they are able to create so much so fast because of the power of that leverage. And so I'm passionate because I know the effects of leveraging short-term debt in my own life, and I know the effects of doing it in my clients' businesses as well. And I don't want you to miss out on building your dream business because you're thinking about short-term debt wrong. And the truth is, for me, is I've always taken on that short-term debt to build businesses, also with a very clear deadline for when I would pay everything off. It was never just going to be ongoing. It was never going to be something that, was just endless. I wasn't willing to do that, but I was very, very clear each time what type of time frame I would pay all of that off in, right? And the cool thing is that I was able to make that happen every single time. I had mentioned with the gym, I had 40K in that short-term debt on no interest credit cards, and I actually only paid $400 in interest on a $40,000 investment basically. And it was because I forgot to make a payment one month. But other than that, I wiped it clear. Okay. And so I wanted to offer you this different perspective on what seems to be a very black and white issue for many people. And I really truly believe that it is one of the reasons that coaches never really go anywhere. They never create anything amazing, is because they are so afraid, or they're so convinced that a little bit of short-term debt is going to ruin their life. And the opposite, I'm not going to say it's going to ruin your life, but the opposite is actually true, where when you create that power and you create that leverage for yourself, it's so powerful. And like I said before, this isn't meant to convince anyone to do anything, but it is meant to reveal one of the biggest limiting beliefs I've seen in my years of doing business coaching. And truthfully, in my opinion, it is one of the top ones that makes or breaks success. And it can affect your long-term and your short-term success in your business. And, to me, when you are scared of this short-term debt, and when you make fear-based decisions in general, it's because you've already decided in your brain that it's not going to work, right? So I look at that $5,000 investment that I made when I was getting started in my gym, or the $7,000 investment that I made when hiring my strategy coach. If I had said, no, I'm not going to do it, it's because I already thought I wasn't going to be successful. But if I knew for a fact that I could turn 7,000 into 15,000 in 30 days, like I did, would I do it? Of course. Of course I would do it, right? But when we make those fear-based decisions, it's because you have already convinced yourself that it's not going to work out how you want to. But what if the opposite were true? So I just want to challenge your thinking a little bit about that, because again, the fear of creating that leverage from short-term debt will keep you stuck. And I talked about this is a very disempowered stance around money, around belief, and around your perception of yourself. And again, I am so passionate about this. And I truly believe that there's no real reward without risk. You are not going to create something, whether it has to do with money and debt or putting yourself out there and creating visibility or whatever. There's no real reward without risk. Okay. And that's what I wanted to share today. And I know that can feel uncomfortable. I know it can feel controversial. This, again, isn't to convince anyone to do anything, but it is to offer a different perspective, because I have had enough conversations and I've had enough thoughts in my own head to know that this is a big deal, to know that it's a make or break, but to know that it's also a very scary thing for people. Again, had I said no to that terrifying $7,000 that I didn't have split between two credit cards, I would have cost myself $177,000 from June to December of 2018 alone, not to mention everything that's happened since then, which has gone into the millions, because that was really the starting point. Okay. So just consider that, and consider that making decisions from a place of possibility versus a place of fear is probably the better way. And of course, you guys know that building a business, building an online coaching business, in addition to investing in the support, in addition to getting the initial pieces of infrastructure in your business in place, which of course costs money, is your content creation. And I want to help you with that totally for free. So no short-term debt there. So if you want to grab my fast content creation guide, it is designed to help online coaches outline all of their content for a month in less than an hour each month. Lots of time saved. And I'm teaching you how to create content that actually converts paying clients. Go grab your free copy over at accontentguide.com. And I'm curious to see how this episode resonated with you.